Welcome to the Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalists of Clearwater on this fine Memorial Day weekend. Really doesn't seem like Memorial Days now that we're in our other state of being. I am Sue Boone, Worship Associate for this morning. My pronouns are she and her. Ann Scott will be assisting me with today's service. If you are a first-time guest to our service, a very special greeting to you. In welcoming you to our spiritual home, we want you to know that this Unitarian Universalist congregation is where seekers find a home. This is a place a person can believe in one God, many gods or goddesses, or no gods. Whatever your religious background, your ethnicity, whomever you love, whatever your economic status, you are welcome here. During our time of transition to a new minister, various speakers will bring theological diversity to our congregation. Every Sunday, we have the wonderful opportunity to experience a different viewpoint in that diversity. Today, I am pleased to welcome to the virtual pulpit Margie Manning, one of our own. I'll tell you more about her later. The prelude this morning is I Hear Liberty Singing by Greg Gilpin. Our opening words are by Thomas Rhodes. We come in a variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some of us grow in bunches. Some of us grow alone. Some of us are cupped inward. Some of us spread ourselves out wide. Some of us are old and dried and tougher than we appear. Some of us are still in bud. Some of us grow low to the ground, and some of us stretch toward the sun. Some of us feel like weeds sometimes. Some of us carry seeds sometimes. Some of us are prickly sometimes. Some of us smell, and all of us are beautiful. What a bouquet of people we are. Come, let us worship together.
Please join me in reading the chalice lighting words by Judith Quarles. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in single rooms and ornate sanctuaries, many of our sibling Unitarian Universalist congregations are also lighting a flaming chalice. As we light our chalice today, let us remember that we are part of a great community of faith. May this dancing flame inspire us to fill our lives with the Unitarian Universalist ideals of love, justice, and truth. Dr. David Katz will now lead us in singing hymn number 1, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door.
We would like to share joys and sorrows with one another. If you have a joy or a sorrow to share, please email the church office by Thursday to be included in the next Sunday service. Or you can call a worship associate if your information comes in late.
Please relax in a position of meditation and prayer. I'm going to read a poem by Stephen M. Chick called Distant Return. Someday out there on a day like this, in a place I will never see, where the clearing winds always come after the storm, I will arrive nameless on a distant memory, carrying with me all the best I gave back to this earth, all the hope I found scattered by others along the roads I traveled, all the courage that came unexpectedly when you took my hand and we cried for those we could not save, all the love that exposed the lies I told myself about who I was and what I was meant to do, all the faith that came to me when I saw others carry these things into the future. After a few moments of silence, we would sing "Oh, with loving kindness."
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
I came home Sunday down Highway 98 through Crystal River and Homosassa. I stopped at a park just north of Crystal River and using my tablet, zoomed into our worship service. As I drove along the narrow, congested streets, listening to the service, I was overcome with emotion. I was so grateful to be able to hear the readings, music, and sermon. Just being able to experience the service while I was traveling was wonderful. Thank goodness drivers couldn't see the tears in my eyes. And I was so excited that I'd be able to listen to our worship service anywhere I traveled. Though in Alaska, I would have had to set my alarm for 6:30 in the morning. Those of you who do get to travel this summer will be able to receive our services. I sure hope UUC can broadcast our services when we get back into the octagon, so we can be inspired on Sundays. We cannot be in the sanctuary. Our church continues to operate, paying salaries, paying for Zoom, utilities, etc. Just because we are at home, don't forget to help the church continue its outreach to us and others. Various ways to support the church are on the screen in the order of service and on the website. Speaking of websites, we have a new one. Have you seen it? Thanks to all of you that worked on it. Our offertory music today will be Song of Peace, attributed to Frederick Chopin, new words by J. Althaus.
Grant us peace, oh grant us peace in this our tribulation, oh grant us peace, dona nobis pacem, oh grant us peace evermore. Grant us peace, oh grant us peace in time of tribulation, oh grant us peace. May our world be free of strife, and may we live a worthy life, and may our peace be everlasting. Dona nobis pacem, grant us peace forever.
Thank you, Paris and Diego. It was fantastic. I have known Margie for almost 15 years. We were both active in the Florida district and were presidents of our respective churches at the same time. She at St. Pete UU and I here at UUC. Deep in my heart, I wanted Margie to become a member here at UUC. During a time of turmoil at UU St. Pete, she decided to start attending our church. I was ecstatic, but I tried to play it cool in case my enthusiasm would scare her away. Margie joined her first Unitarian Universalist congregation 33 years ago this weekend in St. Louis, Missouri. Margie will now deliver her message.
Thank you, Sue. I invite Sue Boone and Ann Scott to join me in reading our Congregational Covenant of Right Relations.
We, members and friends of the Unitarian Universalists of Clearwater, aspire to abide by this covenant of right relations to create a beloved community informed by our UU principles, inspired by our practice of loving kindness, and sustained by our friendships.
We build and serve our community with love and compassion, developing meaningful, respectful relationships. We share our joys and concerns. We gladly broaden our circle of friends to include and welcome newcomers.
We come together in peace, sharing the belief of inherent worth and dignity of all. We cherish our children as our future, promote our youth, and honor the elders for the foundations they have built.
We are supportive of one another's self-development and spiritual growth, acknowledging that each person has a unique path and truth. We are kind and considerate, and we express loving gratitude. We speak kindly of all, especially of those who are not present.
We speak with care, listen appreciatively to each other, and assume others speak with good intentions. We help each other see possibilities inherent in viewpoints other than our own, truly welcoming and respecting the insights of others.
We are generous with our time, talents, and treasures to encourage, include, and inspire one another. We give help and comfort to friends and strangers in need.
We honor and uphold confidentiality and maintain healthy boundaries with each other. We are non-judgmental, opening our hearts and minds to promote empathy and understanding.
We find ways to express and resolve our conflicts and misunderstandings. We speak directly and privately to those involved, listen with an open mind, make amends, and practice apology and forgiveness. We engage in UUC's reconciliation practices as necessary.
We recognize this covenant as a living document and know we may review and adapt it to fit our changing needs and situations as we work together for justice, compassion, and peace for all. Thank you, Sue and Ann. I had been a Unitarian Universalist for more than 15 years before I heard much talk at all about the concept of covenant. And I would not be surprised if some of you who are longtime Unitarian Universalists have had the same experience. Covenant, at its most basic, is a sacred promise from the heart that we make to one another about how we will be together. Now, many other faith traditions have a common set of beliefs, a set of right beliefs. But Unitarian Universalist congregations don't have common beliefs or a creed. Instead of right beliefs, we have right relationships. It is covenant that helps us establish those relationships and allows us to walk together on a faithful path. Covenant is a promise made between individuals in the congregation, between a congregation and a minister, between committee or board members with each other. It is also a promise made between UU congregations to support one another. Covenant has always been at the heart of Unitarian Universalism, going back to what is referred to as the Cambridge Platform of 1648. Now, sometime during the 1800s, the idea of covenant took a backseat to something brand new, the idea of the corporation. And our forefathers, in an effort to be more modern and businesslike, put organization ahead of covenant and ahead of relationships. In 2000 and 2001, UU Minister Reverend Alice Blair Wesley traced the history of covenant, including that shift that occurred in the 1800s, during a set of lectures she delivered at the Meadville Lombard Theological School. Reverend Wesley's lectures were a seminal moment in Unitarian Universalist history, an aha moment to remember that our faith tradition is based on relationship. In fact, in 2009, she received the association's Award for Distinguished Service because of those lectures. Now, fast forward 5 years to the 2014 Florida District Assembly. I was president of the Florida District at the time before it dissolved and became part of the larger Southern region. So at that district assembly, I led a workshop that focused on covenant. There were about 30 Unitarian Universalists from all over Florida in the workshop. And half of them, at least 15 of them, said they were completely unfamiliar with the word covenant. Now, the other half of the people at the workshop said, yes, their congregation had a covenant, but there was not one person in that room who could tell me about that covenant, who could say the words. So we had a discussion about what does covenant mean. These are some of the responses that stood out for me. We agree to behave in a certain way. It's not a contract, but a solemn promise, a promise from the heart. It does not punish, but it helps us come back together. It's not a tool to avoid conflict. It's a tool to have more productive conflict. Reverend Victoria Safford, who is minister at the White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church in Matamedi, Minnesota, reflects much of the same thought. A covenant is not a contract, Reverend Safford writes. It is not made and signed and sealed once and for all, sent to the attorneys for safekeeping or guarded under glass in a museum. A covenant is not a static artifact. It is not a sworn oath, whereas, therefore I will do this or I will die, so help me God. A covenant is a living, breathing aspiration, made new every day. It can't be enforced by consequences, but it may be reinforced by forgiveness and by grace when we stumble, when we forget, when we mess up. And we will mess up. Let me tell you a personal story about how I came to realize the importance of covenant. There was a congregation not so very long ago and not so very far away that did not have a covenant. But the congregation called a new minister who started a regular practice of saying during Sunday worship the James Villa Blake affirmation that's in our gray hymnal. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. The congregation recited that affirmation every Sunday, and things were just going along smoothly until they weren't. A really difficult issue came up, a conflict deep enough to bring in an outside facilitator from a nearby congregation to help the board work through this conflict. Now, the facilitator, who was from a congregation not very far away at all, suggested the board develop its own covenant, promises board members could offer from their own hearts to each other as they worked through this tough issue. It was a pretty simple process. The board took about a half an hour of each board member saying what they valued, what they needed, what they could offer, and all that was distilled into 7 or 8 covenantal promises. Now, when board members followed the covenant, it truly kept tense situations from escalating. Board members were able to listen deeply, call each other back into covenant when something went wrong, and deepen their relationships with each other so they could do better work for the congregation. When the board forgot, or when the board ignored the covenant, when board members talked about people behind their backs instead of to their faces, when they sent nasty emails, when they said, it's my way or the highway, it led to deep divisions, and it led to hurts that could not be healed. And eventually, it drove both board members and congregants away from that church. One of the lessons here is that covenant has to be more than words on paper. It has to be practiced to be real. Reverend Sue Phillips, a UU minister, says it this way: covenant is both a noun and a verb. Now, many of the Unitarian Universalist groups that I've been part of have practices of creating and renewing covenants frequently. The UUA Southern Region, for a time, had a leadership team that I was part of. It's since morphed into adjuncts for the congregational life staff. But the leadership team spent a lot of time working on our covenant, which included the phrase, always begin in covenant with self. In other words, before I can say you're doing something wrong, I have to ask myself, am I behaving the way I should? Our UUA Board of Trustees had a covenant that said, we promise to show up with our best selves, intent on listening with openness and willingness to the voices in the room and to those voices that are not in the room. To speak with an authentic voice, grounded in our lived experience, but mindful of differing cultural interpretations and realities that are present. To honor our duty, to do the work of the board, and to place anti-racism, anti-oppression, and multicultural accountability at the center of that work. Each of us is fully human, with hurts and vulnerability, and the need to laugh and to sing. What I love about that is the recognition that diversity is welcomed, and diversity sometimes makes it harder to immediately come to agreement on things, because as we bring diverse perspectives to the table, we have to agree to work together to find those common threads. We do that by being in honest relationship with each other. So we have a covenant of right relations here at UU Clearwater. It's a thoughtful document that was widely approved at a congregational meeting a few years ago. But before today, when was the last time you heard the full covenant? Maybe 6 months ago, maybe a year ago? Here's my challenge as we get ready to elect a new board of trustees, and soon, hopefully, have a contract minister. Let's take our covenant off the shelf and put it front and center in all that we do. Let's print it in our order of service, our e-octagram. Let's consider making an annual celebration of renewing or updating our covenant. When new members join UUC, in addition to signing the membership book, let's welcome them into covenant. Let us tell our contract minister and ministers to come that we are a people of covenant. I guarantee you, they will welcome that. Now, why is this important to talk about today as we get ready to have our annual congregational meeting? Remember the Cambridge platform that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk? It described the system of church government in the Congregationalist churches of New England. In the book, A House for Hope, Reverend Rebecca Parker writes, in place of a hierarchical church authorized by tradition and governed by priests, bishops, and popes, those early Congregationalists instead said congregation should be organized by people coming together and making a covenant to walk together in their spiritual lives. Covenanted religious communities rest on the authority of their members, who have voice and vote in church governance. Although historically, in all but the most radical communities, it was only the men who could vote. In place of an established creed that all consented to, people were to consent to the common agreements of the community worked out through the democratic process. Now, many of those Congregationalist churches later became Unitarian and then Unitarian Universalist congregations. So the process we're going to undertake in just a few minutes, electing leaders and deciding on bylaws and a budget, is grounded in covenant. I hope as we do the business of our congregation, we remember that what we're really doing is living the promises we've made to each other about how we will be together. Also in A House for Hope, Reverend Parker makes an analogy between Unitarian Universalism and a house. Covenant is the foundation of the home, she writes. And she quotes the hymn we sang as we began our service. Let nothing evil cross this door, and may ill fortune never pry. About these windows may the roar and rain go by. With laughter drown the raucous shout. Though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in. A house whose foundation is covenant will always have the strength to hold love in. May it be so.
We will now sing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has dried us, hope inside us, lead the way on the road. like angels. If you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us. We'll go away on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Let us join together in our benediction. Go in peace, go making peace. Live gently, love mightily, and bow to the mystery.